So
Professor Susan Rogers, thanks so much for taking the time. Now, I'm assuming that somewhere in your career you've stumbled across a harmonizer or two. Is that true?
Harmonizer was one of the devices that I felt like I couldn't do a record without. And that's with no
Wow,
exaggeration. If there
really?
wasn't a harmonizer there, if it wasn't in the room, whether it was the 910, then later the 949 or the H3000, if it wasn't in the room, I remember thinking, all right, we're going to have a problem here. We'll have to rent one or get one somehow, because it became such an essential tool. And as you know, music industry folks, engineers are so brand loyal. When
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
discover something we like, we're like, I think like baseball players, we're superstitious. If it's not there, we feel like, all right, it's all gonna go very badly without this device in the
Yeah.
room. So
Y-
I think it's safe to say I've used them on every record I ever made with every
Wow.
client.
Had you, I know Prince used them when you worked
Oh
with
yeah.
Prince,
So
but you probably ran into them even before that, right? Because didn't you start out in LA like as a studio tech
right, I was the studio maintenance tech at Rudy Records, which was actually called Rudy Records. It was a studio owned by Graham Nash and David Crosby, right in the heart of Hollywood.
Wow.
And they had the early Eventide digital delay and Eventide gear in their room. So
Hmm.
I knew of the gear then. I didn't really start using things myself artistically until I went to work for Prince as his engineer. He transitioned me from the tech role into the
Hmm.
engineering role. So now I got to put my hands on the equipment and actually use it rather than repair it. Um, Prince always wanted to have a little bit of harmonizer available, often on hi-hat. It was great for stereoizing and smearing the
Hmm.
frequency spectrum of the hi-hat, which I loved so well. And later on, I'd put pinches of it on cymbals. I liked that a lot. He didn't need it for pitch correction so much. His pitch was pretty impeccable, but
Hmm.
we liked it for the shading, the
Hmm.
colorizing that it would do, and sometimes for more special effects. So he used it, I think, the way that it was probably its baseline functionality. And
Hmm.
of course, with some delays, of course, we liked it with the delays.
Hmm.
Uh, I remember in particular, though, the 949 bailing me out on a project. It wasn't with Prince, it was after Prince, but I was producing a project in Pittsburgh, 24 track analog, and the background vocals were out of tune. As I recall, the singer wasn't available, wasn't in town to be able to fix those backing vocals, but they were out of tune. And this is 24 track analog,
Oh,
so it's not like we
yep.
had spare tracks. But if you
Hmm.
had one track, what we used to do back in those days is you'd take the original vocal, you'd feed it through the harmonizer, and then you could, with that flywheel, you could on the fly adjust the pitch up or down at the spot where you needed it. So the singer would be singing whatever the lyrics are. Oh, I like mom, mom is the best. And you'd take the wheel, go, and you'd zoom the wheel up or down to get it just right. Now the output of the harmonizer is going to be fed to another blank track.
Right.
It was laborious because you're there
Yeah.
with your hand on the dial.
How many takes would you have? Because you'd have to get it just right. You'd
You
have
have
to
to
get
get
the
it right.
timing right and
You
just
have
the
to get the
right amount.
timing right.
This is before auto tune, so it was
Right. So it's like doing
Rogers
auto-tune
tune or something. I don't know.
by hand, yeah. With doing auto-tune with no math, no algorithms involved, no computational engine. You're just there. It's like, think back to the Flintstones, and they like, if they've got a car wash, it's going to be a dinosaur on
Right.
a treadmill running around that makes the car wash go.
Right.
Fred Flintstone's feet underneath the car. That's what
That
pitch
was like
changing
right
was like. But you had that flywheel, and it was better than having to wait a day to
for
get
the
the singer
singer.
in and doing it all again.
I'm I'm still stuck on Prince. When you started working with him, did you introduce him to the harmonizer, or did he already know about it? Did he
No,
have one already?
he had one already.
Okay.
So when I joined him, it was 1983, and he was coming off the 1999 tour.
Oh, okay.
And he'd already started recording for Purple Rain. He had been working when he could out in Los Angeles at Sunset Sound. It was was well known that Sunset Sound, that
Oh,
was
they had them.
his
Yep.
favorite room.
Yep.
He loved it more than anything, and they had plenty of
Oh,
harmonizers
oh
there.
yeah. Yeah, they were really early adapters of our delay lines, the 910,
Oh,
949. Yep.
oh yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And he used to just call it the sauce. So sometimes if he would want more harmonizer on something, he'd say, put a little more
More
sauce,
sauce on that?
more
That's
sauce.
funny.
Yeah, yeah. If you listen to the Time, his protege band, the Time,
Hmm.
they had a dance move called chili sauce.
Hmm.
Sauce was just a word that meant something a little
Spice
extra
it up. Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Susan, thanks again. This is great. Always wonderful to see you. Can't wait to see you again in person
Yeah,
once this
likewise.
this COVID business is
Yeah.
finally behind us.